We're starting off day 2 with Eiko van Hettinga, co-founder and managing director at 7 Learnings, a company that helps retailers optimize their pricing and marketing spend. Eiko has a proven track record of scaling an e-commerce startup to market leadership. Today, Eiko will discuss how essential pricing optimization has become to any e-commerce company and how to properly set up your pricing team and strategy with best practices and examples. Hello, Eiko. We're delighted to have you with us today. The virtual stage is all yours.
Thank you, Lorraine, and thank you so much for the introduction. As Lorraine already mentioned, I just have to figure out a little bit how I do this here with all of the windows. Just give me a second. I think you should be able to see the presentation now. So what I will be talking about today is about pricing optimization for e-commerce companies. Thank you for having me again. And I want to start out by talking about why you should invest in pricing and pricing technology, why this is an important lever in e-commerce. And I then want to talk about kind of the next generation of technology and next generation pricing technology, how it works, how it looks like, what the benefits are compared to conventional pricing today in e-commerce. And then I want to talk about how you can implement this. But first, I want to extend a bit on the introduction that Lorraine has just given about me and the company 7 Learnings. So where do we come from? We are a spin-off of one of the Berlin universities, where we work together with the Center of Machine Learning Technology. My co-founder Felix was formerly responsible for the global pricing algorithm at Zalando, Zalando being a company that invested heavily in the pricing technology. We've also built the system for About You, one of the most successful e-commerce players in Europe. And today our technology, our software is used across the board in e-commerce and retail. We do office supplies, pharmacy, fashion, furniture. The math and the technology behind it is always very similar. And that's what we want to take a look at closer in today's session. Now, why should you invest in pricing technology and in pricing in e-commerce in general? And the first answer to this question is that pricing is the most important and the lever with the highest impact on your profit. So kind of the rule of thumb is if you get 1% better in pricing, you will drive 6% bottom line. And I think that's not even a high estimate or a high aspiration for that, because what we see with our clients using kind of the latest technology, on average, we increase the absolute profit of our clients by more than 10%. So you can achieve a lot with pricing. And also, if I compare it with other levers, for example, reducing cost, it's a lot easier to implement. So you can reap those rewards in a very short time period. And I will be talking about this a little bit later when we look at the implementation of kind of the newest technology around pricing in e-commerce. Now, what are other drivers that lead to a need of automation, optimization, in the end, the use of technology? And in the pricing space, there are many factors and drivers today that increase complexity when you look at the pricing discipline. So you have an increased competition in the market. You have more and more channels, e-commerce or online retailers are selling on. So this is often a discussion with clients who want to go in different markets and countries. They have different web shops in each country. They want to increase their reach by going on different marketplaces. So in all of these marketplaces and channels, you're actually multiplying the pricing decisions that you have to make. Then you have cost increases mostly at the moment on the products you're buying, but also logistic costs. You have supply chain constraints. How much do you have in stock? Then also disruptions here that impact your pricing decisions. You have an increase in assortment sizes. You have inflation. You're doing things on the marketing side that need to be reflected in your pricing decisions. So there are many, many things that are driving complexity today because so many things, or pricing depends on so many factors. And if you do this all manually or in Excel tools, you will just not be able to handle this complexity. Yeah. And another driver is that actually the technology side itself changed a lot. Now, AI, artificial intelligence, is a big buzzword everybody knows, and it's been around for some time. But I think what changed also recently, or changes has changed over recent years and months, is that the availability of the technology and the ecosystem around using this technology, for example, the data maturity of companies increased a lot. And if you then look at what are the use cases of AI in retail, you will see that, and this chart is from Gartner, so they looked at all kinds of use cases. The price optimization is actually the use case that drives the highest business value and is also the most feasible to implement. So summary again, why should you use or invest in pricing technology? It's the most important driver of profitability. There are many drivers of complexity in pricing today why you need to invest in automation and optimization, and technology itself has changed a lot and helps you to improve your skills, improve your methods in the pricing space. So now that we have talked about why you should look at it, I want to talk about what is kind of the next generation pricing technology, and what are the most advanced companies doing at pricing today in e-commerce. And the technology that is being used is called predictive pricing. Most retailers today still use something we call rule-based pricing. And rule-based pricing is basically any kind of method that is based on humanly programmed logics. Price rules are things like when you set prices based on costs, so you take the cost base and you add a certain margin on it, and that's your price. Or what we also see is that many online retailers especially follow the competition. So they always want to be 5% below Zalando, for example. Now, predictive pricing is not based on these rules and humanly programmed logics. You can use them to set boundaries, but the general principle of how it works is a lot different. The general principle is that it starts with a forecast. How price change will affect your main KPIs. So when I change the price of a product in a certain channel, what will happen to my demand? What will happen to revenue? What will happen to profits? And predictive pricing makes a forecast of each relevant price point and how it affects your KPIs. And then based on these forecasts, you can run optimizations, also taking account your goals. So you set a goal, for example, you want to reach a certain revenue, and predictive pricing recommends the optimal prices to achieve these goals. This is how it works, and I want to go a bit more into the details of it to better explain how it also differs from this conventional rule-based pricing. Now, first thing I want to look at is how does it differ when we look at the kind of day-to-day operational business of pricing. Now, with rule-based pricing, you start by setting these rules, and then you upload prices based on these rules, and then you will review after a couple of weeks. Maybe you will review the impact. Did I achieve the targets I wanted to achieve? What happened here? Usually also then some guesswork starts, because it's not always clear, was this because we changed prices, or did we see a change in profit because we changed something on the marketing side? Usually it's not really easy to isolate the pricing effect here. Now, with predictive pricing, you kind of turn this process upside down. So you start with setting your target. For example, you want to reach a certain revenue. You can set certain boundaries with rules. For example, you want to set prices, but they should have a certain distance only from competitors, for example. And then a predictive pricing already allows you to review the impact before prices go live. So you know what's going to happen with your profit, revenue, demand, profit margin, sell-through rates before you are uploading the prices. And that's very powerful, because you can refine your strategy, and you can see the impact and simulate the impact before this happens. You can simulate different kinds of pricing scenarios. And all of this before any customer has seen any prices. That's one of the major differences. And what's behind this? So what's the technology behind this? I already touched a little bit on this. So for the forecasting part, predictive pricing uses powerful machine learning algorithms to do a sales forecast, but also to measure price elasticity, which is really important for price optimization, and I will talk about this a little bit later. And then based on these forecasts, now you can imagine when you have 400,000 products, you have 10 different channels. So we're talking about 4 million different prices or product channel combinations. And then you multiply it with all the relevant prices that you can play out. It's a huge table of forecasts. And then you can run an optimization based on this, taking into account the goals you want to achieve. Predictive pricing will then tell you for each product and each channel what is the optimal price to reach exactly the goal you have set. Yeah. So what do you need for this to work? It's a machine learning product. It's a big data product. You need a lot of data. You need internal data, that's product attributes. So, for example, categories you use in your shop. Transaction data. So how much did you sell? How much did you sell for a certain price? Cost data. This can be inbound costs, outbound costs. So just the cost of procuring the product, but also logistics costs. Stock data is very important, because you want to know whether the products you're selling are actually available and how much you have of those products. Marketing data can help, for example, traffic data, to improve sales forecasts. And then you can enrich this data with external data, like competitor prices, for example, seasonality data like day of the week, holidays, weather data. to improve forecast and elasticity measurement. And now, while this looks like a lot, if we look at the internal data, really that's data every e-commerce, every online retailer has. You have to have this data. It's more a question of where is this data today, and how fast can you get to this data to make use of it. Yeah. And I want to go a bit deeper into what are the advantages of predictive pricing versus the rule-based approach and the kind of the conventional pricing we see today in e-commerce. Both are automations of pricing. You know, when you have set your rules, you send in the data, and you also get automatically prices out of this. But actually, with these rules, you have to check them all the time and A/B test them if they're still optimal to achieve your goals. Predictive pricing, you don't need to do that because there's a self-learning algorithm in the background, so it learns from each transaction. So you're not dependent on this A/B testing and monitoring of rules. Also, you will need a lot more rules if you have to determine every price with a price rule and a certain logic that you are programmed. And then both methods are using competitor prices. What we see a lot in online retail is that if retailers use rule-based pricing, that they solely base their price decision on competitor prices. So if my competitor increases prices by 5%, I will do the same thing. And we also call this strategy the blind follows the blind, because it's not essentially a very smart strategy. Maybe your competitor is not doing a smart move, or your customers are not comparing prices on this product. So why should you do that? And what should be the exact distance to your competitor? So both methodologies are using it, but what we see in rule-based pricing is that it's solely based on it, and predictive pricing sees it as one of the factors that are important for price setting. Additionally, it looks at historic sales, so what you've sold in the past, at what price. It considers weather and seasonality data, and it measures one very important parameter, and that's called price elasticity. And price elasticity is kind of the holy grail of price optimization. If you can measure price elasticity well, you will set good prices. And price elasticity is if kind of mathematically, if you change your price by 1%, what happens to your demand? And predictive pricing is measuring this parameter on a product level, and can therefore deliver very good price optimization results. You can then steer with goals, setting targets. I already talked about that, and you get these sales, revenue, profit forecasts, which you can also use for other use cases. Now, let's look at some examples to make it more concrete. I'm taking here the product of aspirin. Everybody knows it. Many online pharmacies think, okay, I have to be the cheapest on this product because every customer knows it. So I think it's important to be very cheap on this product. Now, but if you look at the data, you actually see that customers are not super price sensitive on this product. So you can increase prices here, and you will actually increase your profit by a lot. I think in this case, almost 300% if you run this blue strategy. And you're increasing your revenue at the same time. I think this very clearly shows the power of predictive pricing, because it considers price elasticity and not just competitor prices, it will play out a better price. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to increase prices by so much, but even if you just increase prices a little bit, you will already have a significant impact on your profit and on your revenue. Now, other aspects where predictive pricing can help you is when you have products with a certain life cycle and you only have a certain stock, you have to sell them off over a certain life cycle. So like a fashion product over a certain season, like a winter coat, you want to sell it off at the end of the winter season. Now, there are two things you don't want to do. You don't want to be an overseller, so you don't want to have cheap prices, sell it off at the beginning of the season, and are out of stock for the rest of the season, because you could have sold it for a higher price, right? And then you don't want to be an underseller, so you don't want to you don't want to have a lot in stock at the end of the season. You don't want to set too high prices. Because if you have a lot of stock in the end of the season and you want to sell a winter coat when it's already quite warm outside, you will have to give huge discounts to somebody who's buying your product. So it's better to start discounting earlier here. And where predictive pricing can help you is to go on this optimal line, and by this, maximizing your profit over the life cycle and lifetime of your product. Now, another aspect where predictive pricing can help is by aligning what you're doing on the marketing side with what you're doing on the pricing side. Essentially, what you're doing on the marketing side, for example, spending more time on Google Ads or giving out a voucher, wants the same thing as giving a product-specific discounts. You want to drive demand. Now the question is, where should you spend your money? Should I spend more money on Google? Should I give more product-specific discounts? And how is this for each single product? And predictive pricing can help you to make a better decision here by predicting the impact of a marketing campaign, and also helping you considering that you're playing out this campaign to set optimal product prices. So, short summary again, what this new technology of predictive pricing can do for you. What are the benefits of this? You can increase profits by a lot. I think I said this before, 10% on average is what we see for our clients. But actually, it's not just profits. It's often profit, revenue, and sales at the same time. You can do target steering. So very intuitively, you can steer pricing. Even though you have maybe 400,000 products and a lot of complexity in the background, you have less manual work because you can steer it that easy. You don't need a lot of price rules to do it. You don't have to do a lot of A/B testing to monitor your pricing. And you have these forecasts included, which you can use for simulation of your pricing strategy. But you can also use this for improving your supply chain activities or procurement activities, because you know how much you're gonna sell in a certain time frame. Now, we talked about why should you invest in pricing technology. We looked at the newest kind of pricing technology, predictive pricing. And now I want to talk about how can you implement it? How can you make use of this? If you want to build this in-house, you have to look at these 4 aspects of building predictive pricing. First of all, you have to have the data. And as I said before, I don't think there's a question that e-commerce companies have transaction data or product attributes. They all have this data. It's just a question Is this on an old SQL server, or is this already centralized in a data warehouse? So how easy can you access this data? But usually it's a challenge that can be overcome, and you can get to this data. And then you do the pre-modeling, where you start by understanding the data. Yeah, what are the drivers of sales, for example? You have to prepare the data and clean the data. So, for example, you will have errors in this data, nulls in this data. You have to get rid of these problems and clean the data so you have a good database. It's super important. And then you have to do model building. So you have to come up with the data features that, for example, determine price elasticity. And there we already see that many e-commerce companies struggle, because it's not easy to build these models. It's not easy to measure price elasticity, especially if you have sparse data on certain products. It's difficult to do this. And the next step, the post-modeling, is even more difficult. You have to deploy these models probably on a daily level, because you want to have updated models to do your pricing. It's one thing to go through these steps once, have a good model, do one good prediction. It's another thing to do this on a daily basis and have this running continuously in the background. That's not easy, and that's something where many retailers also fail by building this by themselves. But generally speaking, these are the steps you have to go through to build next generation pricing technology, predictive pricing. Now, to be able to do this, you have to have a strong team in the background. And I want to share some insights about building a team like that from our pricing community, where Shital from Zalando presented what you need to take into account when building a team to have this kind of latest state-of-the-art pricing processes. Now, what you have to do first is to ensure that you have top management buy-in, because pricing is so sensible. You will need some resources and money to do it. You have to have top management on board to do this. You have to have a very good understanding of your stakeholders, because pricing influences what you do on the marketing side. Category management wants to be involved. Supply chain management wants to be involved. So there are very many stakeholders involved, and you have to be able to manage them well. You have to have the right tools and resources available. This could be a pricing tool, for example. It could be also data itself and an environment where you can make use or tap into the potential of this data. Generally speaking, today, data is power. So you have to have good capabilities there, and have a good environment there. And then you have to hire an interdisciplinary team. This should entail some pricing managers who know about pricing economics, but also have some business understanding, product managers that have even more business understanding, and then people who can work with data, like data analysts and data scientists. Now, if you have done all this, you've hired this team, you've gone, this is in place. What do you have to do to implement it? And we have touched on this a bit when we looked at the single stages of building it. But I want to share kind of an examplementary implementation timeline. And how it looks like. So what you would start with is to define the strategy and talk about the goals that you want to achieve with price automation and optimization. We'll start then by collecting the data. We've talked about that quite a bit today. Cleaning the data, aggregating the data. You will do the model training. And then you can A/B test it, so you can test it against, for example, the current method that is being used, and there you can clearly measure the impact of improving your pricing methodology, and this is something I think which will also get a lot of attention from management, because they can see how much you can improve profits, for example, with pricing. And then you can go into continuous optimization. Now, this timeline looks great, right? It doesn't take a long time until you can start with the optimization, actually only 6 weeks after you have the data available. The truth is, if you're building this on your own, if you have to hire the team around a data scientist, maybe also some engineers, this can be only this part for cleaning and model training. This can be months or years. So you can shortcut this by using external tools. But when you want to build this in-house, I can already tell you now, this will take a long time. Yeah. But you can shortcut this plan using external tools. Now, I also want to share a case study around this. We have implemented predictive pricing for Vitafy, which is a German e-commerce company selling all kinds of products around fitness and nutrition products. What we achieved there, which we also tested in an A/B test, was a 10% profit uplift, 12% uplift in revenue, and an 18% increase in sales. So I think significant results have been improved with this, and actually these uplifts in profit and revenue we see regularly when we work with clients when they use predictive pricing. Yeah, I'm also at the end of the presentation. I hope I could generate some motivation to look closer at the pricing topic and spend more time and resources on this. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Right. Thank you, Eiko. Great presentation. Let's see if questions. I've got one here. You talked about technical implementation a lot. Do you need a business or pricing consultant to switch to predictive pricing?
Actually, that's one of the benefits of this approach, is that you don't need a consulting company. Because what do these consulting companies do is often to categorize your products and try to find out how sensible do they react to price changes. Yeah. And this is something the technology is doing for you, and based on the past data that you have. So actually, you don't necessarily need a business consultant to implement that. Some of the bigger clients decide to do this also to get some external know-how into the process, but it's not necessary to have a business consultant.
All right. Your next question. In your view, what are the next developments we will see in the pricing space?
Yeah, so I think what we will see is that that marketing and pricing will converge, or that they will be planned together. Like companies like Zalando are already doing this. Because essentially what you do on the market, kind of the goals are very much the same. Yeah, if you spend more money on marketing measures, you want to increase your demand. You want to do the same if you give a discount. And the question is, where should you spend your money? And it's a big question for an online retailer, because they almost spend as much money on marketing and discounts as they spend on the product itself. So if you're a little bit smarter around this, you will be much more profitable. And I think having tools in place that help you to make these decisions smart is something that we will see more and more in the future.
All right. Our next question, let's see here. Which one has a better conversion rate, dynamic pricing or personalized pricing?
I think it's not something you can answer generally.
Mhm.
And also, I wouldn't say they are two different things. So, I mean, dynamic pricing is every kind of methodology where you change prices. And personalized pricing is essentially also that. And personalized pricing goes a step further where you set prices, different prices for each customer. And while we see a lot of retailers doing that or discriminating between different channels, for example, maybe you have certain prices in one country but other prices in another country because there are different
Mhm.
willingness to pay. That's very common. It's very rather uncommon to individualize prices on the customer level. In the way that I don't know, someone with a Mac gets a different price than someone who comes in with a Windows computer, because that can also lead to a lot of backlash and unhappy clients. You can do this a little bit with couponing, like incentivizing certain groups, but I think there are limits to it, and I also don't think it's a smart and good strategy, especially if you want to make your customers happy. I hope I could
Right.
explain it a little bit, but it's not a
Yeah.
straightforward answer.
Yeah. Also, being kind of a data person, when I think of that, I think of just the added complexity. You've already got your products and your pricing, and you're trying to do this predictive, and then adding that next layer, what does it really get you for that amount
Yeah, the
of
question is,
complexity, and keeping track that you offered ICO at this price versus Lorraine at this price,
yeah,
the complexity. But I'm sure there are certain situations where it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger question if you do B2B pricing, but then there are
Mm-hmm.
also different dimensions you look at. But if you look at end consumer pricing, I think it's difficult. And then how much data do you have for these different groups of people? It's already, I think, not easy to do it on a product level. But yeah, as you said, if you have another layer, it makes it even more difficult. So I'm a bit
Right.
skeptical about it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we think of that individual pricing more as you said, around like promotions and
Yeah,
discounts as a smarter way to go about it.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And then the next, I think right now it's the last question, but I'll check after you answer this one, is how often should a subscription company update their pricing?
Yeah, so we're not we're not doing this for subscription companies, but more for online retailers that sell physical goods.
Mm-hmm.
And I think still trying to answer that question. I think what you can say is that customers are more and more willing to accept dynamics in the pricing because they see it everywhere. So it is something you can look at. Certainly, and it's will be also a driver of profits and revenues there. Um, and then I think it depends a bit on your business whether you should have a high frequency, yes or no. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not the best person to ask about subscription businesses.
Okay, you should be working on that and add it to what
Yeah,
you do. That's, I
yeah.
mean,
Next year maybe.
yeah,
Next course now we'll be talking about
yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah. The two checkout business within Verifone that I run, that's what we're selling is subscriptions and
Yeah.
platform and payments. And so I have a lot of customers that would be interested in that.
Yeah, and actually, I mean,
Yeah,
the idea of price elasticity behind it is still the same. So you
yeah,
can you can probably use it, and I believe that you can be more dynamic, but how dynamic exactly is probably also something you just have to
right.
test and see how the rest of the market is doing it. and then learn about it. Yeah.
Right, right. It's a lot different in a subscription area than a physical good, where you discount that and it goes away. You've got a subscription, you've got them coming back the next month. So if you raise or lower prices, what do you do to your existing customer base? You know,
Yeah.
it's a different animal to go after. So.
Yeah, I think customer lifetime value is even more important in this environment, and looking at that, so your KPIs look a little bit different. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. I believe. Let me check one more. I believe that's it. Thanks
Okay.
everyone for your questions. Thanks, Eiko, for your session today.